Hello, and thanks for joining me. Today, I wanted to take some time and talk about our perspective and what we saw at the Manusec show. So, we went to the Manusec show last week in Chicago, and we do a lot of shows here at OTbase. And the reason why we do that is it's important to be out there in the field, get to meet our customers, talk to prospects, and just see what's generally going on in the industry. The real reason that Manusec is one of our favorite shows to go to is because there actually has a mix of people there. Whereas most shows is mostly the IT people running around looking for things and talking about stuff. At this show, it's different because there's a manufacturing group as well. So normally you'll see an IT guy along with an OT person, and then maybe their manager. You'll see CISOs, you'll see shop managers, you'll see floor managers, you see all kinds of people there. And that to us yields is value because we get to have much more meaningful conversations. The focus for this one is manufacturing, obviously, and these seem to yield much higher level and then lower level conversations as well. So you have the higher level conversation with the CISO, how they're looking to do an asset inventory, but we can get very, very detailed with their OT and IT people about how that actually happens. So it's really a good conference for those types of people. Then the theme of this show, which is the theme of most shows, is an OT asset inventory. How do you get one? The interesting thing is the industry has so over prioritized detection that that's mostly what everyone talks about. Anomaly and threat detection, security, anomaly and threats over and over and over again. And that never yields the inventory that people are searching for in the first place. So it's up to us to be at these shows to kind of show, okay, guys, there's another way to do this, and there's a way to do it the right way that doesn't yield to these ridiculous downtimes and installations, and at the end of it, still not getting the inventory you were looking for in the first place. So I talked to couple of different prospects, and most of the conversations are generally the same, but there's two that stuck out. One gentleman came up to the booth and asked us, what's different about you versus Clarity and Nozomi Dragos? And I told him obviously that those are threatening anomaly platforms and we're an OT asset inventory, and told him about the differences in that. And when I actually showed him the product, he was so surprised that he stopped and was very candid with us and said, "Hey, I got to tell you that I have been in a year-long deployment of this tool, and we are still no farther than we were a year ago in getting this thing up and running." He has 52 plants. They have to install sensors everywhere, and then they have to install these Guardian, all kinds of things in there just to get an inventory. But the inventory they get is not complete, and it's just causing them so much hell. So his question was, could OTbase be integrated with this solution? And I said, well, obviously, yeah, we can do that as long as we have a REST API. We can integrate with anything. And he said, do we have, history, or have we done this in the past? I said, yes, it's quite often that someone will ask us to integrate with some other third-party solution. So that was right off the bat the wrong tool for the job, and these guys are suffering for it. Another memorable interaction I had with a prospect was he came up to the booth and said, "Hey, how do you guys do your discovery?" And I said, "The only way to do discovery for OT asset inventory is active." "Well, isn't it going to blow up our plant?" And then I have to take my time and say, okay, no, protocol-based discovery could never yield any negative results because that's the way the manufacturers design the equipment in the first place. So imagine not being able to speak in the language you're designed to speak in the first place. I mean, if that happens, you got much bigger problems than the communication in the first place. So it's almost like it's our job to push back on the FUD and the misinformation in the industry because there's just so much of it. I also gave a talk when I was there too, and my talk was about the use cases of an OT asset inventory. And this is the right crowd for this kind of talk because you have the manufacturing, their ear, you have the OT and the IT guys in the room. And our use cases for OTbase are for the two types of people, for OT and IT. So I was talking about, what is an OT asset inventory in the first place, because I think that's the first thing that we have to do, is to show people what that actually means. Because if you were to walk up to anyone using any of the threat and anomaly detection crowd and ask them, do they have an OT asset inventory? They're going to tell you, yes, they do, because they do. It's just not very good. It's not usable for a lot of the things they want to do, but they do have one. So it's up to us to show what that looks like. So that's what I did during the speech. And you can watch the crowd, like, this is interesting. We can't do any of these things. I talked about obsolescence management. I talked about, the real risk in an OT environment is not the cyber threat. That's rarely happens. It's blown up to make it seem like it's a much bigger occurrence than it really is. But the real risk is obsolescence. Obsolescence is the thing that'll bring you to your knees. Not knowing where your devices are, not knowing what the life cycle of those devices are, not knowing the connectivity of those devices are. You're not knowing even the dependencies or the redundancies of these devices. Those are the things that'll bring you to your knees. It's not the state actors or the hackers in their underwear and a hoodie. That's not likely to happen. But much more likely to happen is a device go down that you didn't know was there in the first place. So once you take the time to explain these things to the OT and IT crowd, they start to think. And after my speech, one guy came up to me and he threw his badge down and said, "Damn it, you just blew up my plans." And his IT and OT guy were there next to him. He was the manager. And they said, "This is what we've been telling you for a long time." They were looking at and going through the process of signing up for an anomaly and threat detection tool. But after listening to what I said, they realized that was not going to get them where they wanted to be as far as having a complete inventory. And it could never get them to that point of getting that inventory. So he came to us and said, okay, well, we need to have a real conversation, because after listening to that, I know that I'll never get there. How do we go forward? So those are the kind of conversations we really want to have. It's not a huge amount of people at the show. I mean, there are shows much bigger, but that's not important. The important thing is having these meaningful conversations with prospects. And we always see our customers there, which we welcome to see, but having these deep conversations that really start to tackle some of the fear mongering in the industry about things that probably would never, ever happen. We're able to push back against that with facts and not fear. So in a nutshell, it's a good show. I think anytime we're in front of customers and prospects, we have a good show. And we really like to show the product and spend time to, really cut through all of the crap in the industry. So if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Other than that, I will see you next time. Thanks.